you don't just show up and interview them and go away. We have, and I think what you guys learned in media school, media ethics. We have the considerations which you must take into account when you're going out there in the field to try and get stories from persons with disabilities. I want to share a recent experience that we had with Brian Mushiri. So I think that's Jackie interviewing Brian Mushiri. We went to Nakuru with the team to do stories. I think last time I mentioned that we have a project which we're trying to change the narrative on how disability is reported. And basically what we're trying to do is giving voice to persons with disabilities to tell stories in their own way. And we're looking at disability champions, like people whose story can turn around the face of disabilities. So Brian Mushiri was a student at Egerton University. Life was going quite well for him, quite well. He had friends. He had friends. They would come, go to parties, and so just a normal life of a university student. And then one day he was home, minding his own business, and his friends called him. They told him we need to go out to Nakuru town. There's a club we need to go to and so on. So they came and picked him, and they went to club hopping. And then when they were coming back home, they had an accident. It was quite fatal, actually. I think everyone died except him, if I remember right. Even the guy who had come to pick him, his friend, also passed on. Or one other person survived. But then, so he got spinal cord injury, and actually he didn't go back to school. He didn't go back to college. He hasn't gone back. But he was in hospital for a long time. Then afterwards, his friends, because he was very popular, got together and decided to buy him this wheelchair, which helps him with mobility and so on. So when we went to visit Brian, he was the only one who was at home. He was that day. His parents and siblings had gone to the farm. I think it was a harvesting season. So he's the only one in the boma, and we got there. They had a metal gate, but he was able to tell us what to do. We opened it and so on, and then we discussed where do we interview him from. So we looked at locations in his compound, because it's a large compound. It's a very neat compound. We decided to go under these trees, and because he couldn't sit on any other chair, we had to interview him from his wheelchair, and which is a bit high. And I remember discussing with Jackie what do we do, and she proposed to get pillows so that at least she would be on almost the same level with Brian when she was interviewing him. And all this time, of course, Brian would tell us, okay, go to my house, go get this pillow from here, and so on. So what I'm saying is that, and I think Trailer has really mentioned that, if you go to, let's say, interview someone, and you feel like you're superior, or you're just coming to get the story and get out, there's no relationship, then maybe all these things would have failed, because Brian was alone. And if we did not strike that rapport and talk to him and laugh, joke, then this would have been very difficult to actually do that. So what I'd want you to do is to try to picture yourself. Suppose you go to the field and you're supposed to interview a person with disability, and you're the one who's calling shots. You're there. What would you do? Because I know some of us, even just being in the presence of someone with disabilities, you panic, because maybe our society has not prepared us on how to really. In fact, our system is that system of exclusion. Yeah, there are so many stories of persons with disabilities who are hidden, who are still even hidden today. Something like that. So we do not really know how best to interact with persons with disabilities. But I'm glad we are here and we're taking that bold step. But basically, all those media ethical principles that we've learned do no harm. Like Brian, we didn't want to make him, harm him more. leave him the way we found him, in one piece, perhaps things like, the rights for persons with disabilities, things like, confidentiality. Yeah, even if someone tells you something that is very, very, sensitive, because sometimes when people see the camera, they open up. So what do? Because they've told you to just go out there and publish it, or you have to weigh what you say or what you don't say. Like, I remember there's another interview we were doing in Nakuru still, and with a teacher from a public school, and she really, I think at that time she was engaged. Was she engaged, or she had a husband? She had a new. Let's say she had a man in her life. Let me say that she had a man in her life, but before that, she was involved in issues of gay rights issues and stuff like that. And there's a confession she once said about stories around being gay. But now here, there's a man in her life, and she's introducing this man and so on. So even if that person is open and talks about such issues, you have to ask yourself, so is it in the best interest of this individual if I publish the story in the way it is? So those are some of the, what you call, ethical sensibilities, the considerations you need to make as as a reporter while you're out there in the field. And sometimes you don't prepare for them. When you get there, that's when those issues come up, and you have to think on your feet. Okay, so perhaps where to start? You have to really plan and prepare. You have to really plan and prepare. For example, if you're going to interview this person at a particular location, we had this. I think the cable is a bit loose, and this is how it was behaving in the morning. But when the IT people came, it stopped doing that. So I hope it will humiliate in the break. But then basically, when you maybe I'll just continue. So think about whether this person you're going to interview will require special accommodation. For example, will you need an interpreter? Will you need perhaps a wheelchair access? Perhaps will they need a very quiet place, because we have a different range of disabilities. Some are even invisible, and maybe noise distracts this person that you're going to interview. So think about all those special accommodations. And if you don't know, you can ask. Call them, or do an email, or whatever other means you can find, and ask them, is there any special accommodation that you will need? I mentioned earlier that we've done a couple of research with the University of Pretoria, and we've been to South Africa to present. And during these conferences, I've come across, so many people with disabilities, different ranges of disabilities, and we've become friends. We've networked and so on. But even when this form, when they send us a form to fill for accommodation and so on, there's a whole lot of information they want. They ask about accommodation. Will you require a wheelchair? Disability issues. Guide, and so on. So even us, when you're thinking about interviewing a person with disability, think about those special accommodations that you might require in the field. And then secondly, it's the choice of meeting. So where do you meet these people? If someone tells you I have a very nice story and I want to be featured and labeled differently, maybe they are in Mombasa or Nakuru or Eldoret or Karatina, do you tell them come to Nairobi, not really paying attention, how they're going to travel and so on. So sometimes, it's even best to meet these people on location where they are. But you have to ask, where are they comfortable meeting you and telling you the stories? Because whatever location you choose, you have to ensure, transport is available, you can reach there. It's affordable, perhaps. It could be too expensive, maybe the place you're choosing. We have those accommodations that are provided for in that particular place. And then I know in media we're always in a hurry, but here again we have to make a very special consideration in terms of time. Allow plenty of time if you're thinking about this interview. Don't just think you'll go there for 30 minutes and then disappear. Think about this story we had in Nakuru. So you go, you meet Brian, he's alone. So, and Nakuru is far, and we had to travel back that day. But you can't go and tell him, we don't have time, harakisha, etc. So you have also to allow for plenty of time, so that if there are any other small issues, you can sort them out without becoming agitated, and without also your interviewee also feeling agitated. We'll share these slides, so even if maybe it's not possible to project them, sorry about that, but I'm sure Simon is going to do something about it. But remember, every time when you're in need, you should ask the expert. And who's the expert? The expert is this person whom you're going to interview. The interviewee is the expert. So don't be shy. Ask them. If you have anything that's not clear, will you require an interpreter? What accommodations will you require, and so on. So always, the best tip in disability reporting is asking the expert. Now, once you've made all these preliminary arrangements and you're now in the field or location, your interviewee, you have to think about how you set up the interview. And some of the extra things, apart from the things that you know, which you need to pay attention to, for example, is checking the interviewee's eye level. So the eye level. Like, think about this story about Brian Bashir. We have to get the interviewer a couple of pillows so that she can be at the eye level. Or even when you're setting up the camera, also don't make them look up. Perhaps or just ensure that the framing is right. And then something else that's problematic that from our experience we've recognized is that if you're interviewing a person with disability who has a companion or a guide, most people tend to talk to the guide and not to the person with disability. They tend to talk to the guide. I think maybe he needs to be in the room. Every time he comes, he stops doing whatever he's doing. Now, there are many people who are my witnesses, not just me alone. Yeah, okay. And so talking about interviewee's eye level, so place yourself and the camera at the interviewee's eye level, if possible, and then speak directly to the interviewee. Even if they have a guide, don't address the guide, because you're not interviewing the guide, you're interviewing the person with disability. So also do that, and then ensure accessibility. Like if you're doing an interview here, and even when I was inviting Tyler over here, if she had a mobility issue, this room would have been very uncomfortable because the cables are everywhere, right? So check on such small things. Are you even making the environment safe for the person that you are interviewing? And this is Jen Theory. Some of you might know her. She was my student at St. Paul's University, and she's one of the disability champions. She's not media shy, and she's very ready to tell her story. It's a very, very positive story. Actually, Jen, what can I say? Like I taught her for 4 years, and we never even looked at her disability. It wasn't an issue to her. It wasn't even an issue to us. She was very positive, very, let's say forward-looking, exuberant, full of life, engaging, and so on. So we have also some very positive stories that are out there, which can potentially change our view of disability. Now, perhaps just to give a few tips on specific, disabilities and some of the accommodations that can be, critical to think about. The first one you can think about is visual disability. So if you're going to interview a person who has visual disability, what would you want to consider? And I want you to pay attention to this slide, because the task that we have later on involves visual disability. So we want to see whether you can put into practice some of these best practices. So first you're saying you have to introduce yourself. Yeah. So if someone who cannot see you, and you have to introduce yourself and your crew members. So you can even say, John Ndavula. We say men are colorblind. So I'm wearing a what kind of shirt? I can't say white. I can't be like. But then you try. Unajaribu. Yeah. So I'm John Ndavula. I have a white shirt or whatever color. And my companion is so and so. And so describe. You have to be very descriptive. And we're told this is one of the areas where we're not very good as Kenyans describing things. The people who tell you ukienda huko chukua mkono ya left when they mean right, and so on. So here we have to try and pull up our socks, really try and describe. So describe yourself, describe the members, and then you can also describe the room, and even some of the facilities you have, like if it's the microphone, say the microphone is in front of you, and so on. And then also in terms of directions, you have to be very clear. You have to give very specific directions. Don't just say over there. The camera person is over there. You can say right in front of you, or to your left, or the back, and so on. And then this general statement you're making, talk to the interviewee and not the third person. So if they have a guide, don't talk to the guide. Yeah? Because it's not the guide you're interviewing, it's the person with disability that you're interviewing. So focus on them. Okay? But as we've said, and remember my presentation, I'm punctuating it with this slide. The best tip in terms of interviewing people with disabilities is you ask the expert, and the expert is the person you're interviewing. Yeah. So when in doubt, just consult them, ask them. So is this okay? Is this comfortable? And so on. Okay. And remember Maureen saying she would even tell her interviewees, if you're not comfortable answering this question, then do not answer it, something like that. So always ensure, keep checking that everything is okay. Now, if you are interviewing people with speech disabilities, one thing to remember is that they may talk slower than you used to. Now, the problem is that as Kenyans, I'm not sure about other communities, we've joked so much about people with speech disabilities, and until maybe all we remember is just the jokes we have, which are not helpful. And I think last time we met, we talked about some of these memes that we keep on sharing online, and they show the egoist language, like we don't really care about you guys, we're just there for us as fun objects and so on. So they may speak slower than they used to. So what you need to do is that, one, you need to avoid the urge to interrupt or complete sentences for them. You might think that you're helping, but you're not. So you have to be patient, and then again, even more patient. And I think Maureen also mentioned that, patience. You have to have a lot of patience. These interviews will teach you even more patience after that patience. So you have to be very, very patient. And also, maybe another thing is that there's this attitude, this patronizing attitude. Like they say something that you've not heard or you've not understood. You ignore that thing. But you're saying whatever they're saying is important. So if you've not heard, just tell them that I've not heard or I've not understood. Could you please repeat? Because it's important. It's their voice. Maybe that's the story they want to pass across. So if you don't understand something, just pause, ask for a repetition, and so don't just gloss over it and think it's not important and move on. Okay? Now, if you're interviewing people who are deaf or hard of hearing, because also deaf has ranges. There's find a medic, they can describe those ranges in a better way. There are a couple of things that you can think about. One, in terms of position, because most of them do lip reading. So in terms of position, make sure that you position yourself where the interviewee can see you, so that they can also read your lips. And then also